So, how you doing today at the Classic Gaming Expo 2005?
Hi, how are you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. Just wanted to ask you a couple of questions about the Fairchild Channel F you created.
Yeah, sure.
And are there any unreleased games or prototypes that were made for the system that never actually came out in the stores?
Yes, several. There's about a dozen that didn't make it to the stores, weren't produced. There's also some hardware that we never put in the public domain, like a cabling system, which allowed you to download video games over cable television. We built those receivers for an experiment with teleprompter, and unfortunately today I don't even have one of those around. They were made, several hundred of them, and they were never put out.
And one good question is, would you be interested in dumping any of those ROMs to the internet for emulation, or like if those Atari Age guys wanted to help you on that, would you be interested in that?
Sure. Yeah, I can do that.
Cool.
I would say I can make it available if somebody wants to do it.
Yeah, that'd be cool right there. Also, are there schematics for the Channel F if somebody was going to, you know, put it on one chip, or just you know, someone that's tinkering around with things?
It could be. I have to look them up, but I have schematics somewhere.
Because that would be something that could be good on the internet as well. Because what I've seen on the internet is that no schematics are available on the internet, so that would be something something rare, you know. To
Oh yeah, well I have somewhere. I have to look them up, but I have somewhere around. I have them.
Cool. And were the games purposely not exactly the same size as an 8-track? Like they resemble an 8-track a lot for
Well, it was not. They were. The concept of putting them into a cartridge was not to have them confused for an 8-track, because it would have given us problems by placing an 8-track into the slot. They were purposely made not to follow an 8-track.
And they couldn't have been made smaller or bigger or anything like that?
They could have been made smaller. But again, the ergonomics of it was to make it handheld and heft to it. People could perceive value by size and weight. If they were made to the size that they really were, people would have difficulty in tracking where they are, feeling for them, and merchandising them in stores. It would have been difficult. So again, they were made to a certain size in order to perceive the worth of the device, of the games.
Okay. And getting philosophical there, what were you planning to do with Fairchild had it not went out of business? Like, what would have been the next step had you still been working at Fairchild and producing?
Well, we were producing, getting ready. I had a design for a personal computer, and planning on producing that personal computer and putting it out. It was a device that looked like a laptop that had a docking station that was the desktop, which had a monitor and everything else built into it, with floppies. Cool. And eventually hard disk. But I was never allowed to put it through. We kind of went out of existence before we got to that point.
So you're more going into like the PC realm rather than the gaming with your
Yes, in fact, the word one time was used as home computer. I disliked that term. It was an easy term for people just to come up with. Home computers are something in my mind that are put into a home. It's a computer that runs the home. It runs your refrigerator, it turns your lights on, it runs your air conditioning, it runs your burglar alarm, it runs your communication. That's a home computer. A personal computer is one that you use personally to do spreadsheets, applications, word processing.
Were you going for both of those types of computers, or were you going for
No, because my feeling is that the one home computer was a different machine, and I felt that it was something that you had to incorporate with a building company at time of construction of a home.
That makes sense.
It was very hard to add that as aftermarket. One of the problems you find with every computer is the interface wiring between the peripheral devices and the computer itself. In fact, there's more money in the wiring than there is in the electronics to do it. The cost of the wiring is prohibitive. This is what has also given rise to a lot of wireless functions. But I don't think in every case wireless is the answer. I think in many cases, if you're going to control power applications, wireless is not going to handle it.
Okay. And from being in the video game industry from the beginning, what would you say what do you say could be the future of gaming as you see how it is now and how it was then? What do you think video gaming will do in the future?
Well, one of the things I was looking into myself is the scenario game that puts you in the game. In other words, a game of adventure that the player is actually you. In other words, the camera takes a picture of you in all angles, and that becomes the player in the game.
So a lot more VR and like total immersion and things like that.
Total immersion in the game where you have a scenario to take you to places you can't go today. Okay? Where you have backgrounds, you're in Hawaii, you'll be walking a beach, you'll be climbing a mountain, doing all the things you can't do normally, but you can do it in your home with a view of you. Because when you see yourself in something, it's different than you just see the view of it. And to see you interact with other people, villains, monsters that you can defeat, but not necessarily karate jumping. Maybe you defeat them with your brain.
So almost, so maybe you could say like the future of video gaming, like the ultimate would be kind of to end up creating like a Matrix type of environment then where it's a total virtual reality then.
Yes.
Okay, it's interesting. How about that Pow TV for those curious about that? How did that actually physically work with the phone and the...
It was twofold. As I mentioned, the guy's name was Marv Kaplan. I don't even know what happened to him to this day. But it was years ago. He approached us about the concept. And he had the idea, but we applied it to the hardware. Because one of the things he said, well, can an individual call in and activate the game? And the problem technically was, if it was going to be sound activated, we had to have a way that the announcer couldn't activate it when he's talking on the phone versus the player. So the feasibility of electronics was to produce what is known as a hybrid, which would attenuate the signal from the one side, being in the announcer, but allow the other side, which is the phone subscriber, phone caller, to be able to say something and activate. Then was to take the signal and make it a closure to the hand controls. In other words, when you said pow, you could have said anything, or any sharp noise, or you could have clapped your hands, it would have done the same thing. It would activate the closure to the hand controller, which would activate something in the game.
Okay. And my last question is, what did you get involved with after Fairchild?
For a short while, I went into video games myself. I produced a company called Videosoft, where it started out that I realized that cartridges had a limitation. And then let me tell you what the limitation is. You build so many cartridges and they don't sell particularly, you have a logistics problem of where to balance your inventory. So what I came up with is, instead of using ROMs, using cassettes. I wasn't the only one that came up with this concept. The difference was my unit had a cassette recorder and player in it and plugged into a 2600, sat on top of it. And it also had a connection to the phone line. And I was planning on introducing a whole level of interactive games played over the phone, so that two players on both sides having identical games with an audio line to their phone could play each other. So cool. Shut-ins could play Joe across town, okay, and do that kind of function and keep score, and that was a new criteria games.
Cool, that's pre-internet right there. Yeah, actually I have one other question before my battery goes out here. Is what were some of the names of, besides the video color bar generator, of some of the unreleased prototypes or unreleased games?
One of them was called Color Order. That one was, it played different patterns and colors on the screen versus music fed into it. That was to play. There was another one that we were working on that actually was a control program for model trains. What it was is that it gave you a picture of a train, and you would activate certain functions on the train, like blow a whistle and give it power back and forth, which actually meant an output signal to drive a HO train.
That's pretty neat. How about that 3D Atari 2600 game?
We have that. That one uses what they call analytic red and blue glass registration. There were two images, and the images, one was red and one was blue. And you put the glasses on, and it appeared that the two images coincide. The trick is the distance they appear out from the screen is a function of the registration of how far two colors are apart.
How come they didn't develop games like that for the 2600, you know, maybe from Atari or afterwards? Because everyone would have loved those kind of games, you know.
Well, we did. We did that one for the 2600.
And that one actually came out?
No, we never released it.
Okay. And what was the name of that one?
It was first called Hold the Ghost.